Ready.
Oh, good evening and welcome to our show. Sorry.
It's really great to be here.
Yeah. So, should I say for the record who you are or not?
Sure.
Who are you?
Well, my name is Tom. I am your brother.
That's what I thought. That's cool.
Tom Young, age 52, currently of Nashua, New Hampshire. And, all else will be revealed over the course of the interview, I guess.
Cool. Yeah, that's enough to start with. So, what is the suckiest thing about this past? It's not a year anymore. Now it's like, was it like freaking
year and a third?
Yeah, 7
solid
months almost.
Yeah.
So, what was the most suckiest ball sacky thing about the year?
It's hard to choose one, but as a catch-all, I guess you'd have to say, or I would have to say, that just the surreal, dismal feeling of just having so much of what made life at all enjoyable or purposeful or something just suddenly yanked away. And I realize it's probably comparable. I have no idea, but I would guess it's probably comparable to being sent to prison.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and just out of the blue, well, not really out of the blue. I guess basically I didn't see it coming. I was going to say, but as we started into it, I could sort of see the path developing. I do remember saying when we were in San Fran, the last partial week of February and the first few days of March,
right?
I was all prepared to come home here to New Hampshire and just say, oh, it was ridiculous out there. Anytime someone coughed, people would go, ah, and then it spread out here.
Right.
And I remember when we were in San Francisco, though, I remember saying, well, this is all going to be over by the end of March, probably sooner.
Right.
And now I have to look back and say, well, I was completely wrong.
Right.
So just, I guess the worst thing, I could phrase it another way, is like I would live life in little patches where just going to the next thing I looked forward to. Kind of like, oh, you get through this work week and then you have this thing to look forward to, party, get together, event that you go to, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden there aren't any of those for the foreseeable future. And the tedium, if I had to put a word to it, the sheer tedium of the whole thing was the worst part. Yeah.
Right. The tedium, yeah.
The tedium.
For those who don't know, used to be a word for a dink in our family.
Inside joke.
Yeah. I like that tedium. But so when were you clued in that I mean, when did you know that it was going to be like a thing, like where stuff was going to be so shut down? And like, when did you know? When did you suspect like this was going to hell in a handbasket, in other words?
So let's see, I remember the date we flew home March 7th. And then I started a normal, I thought, work week, whatever, the Monday, March 9th, or whatever the date was.
Right.
And then my employers were all, oh, this coronavirus thing. And I don't know if we're going to have to close the office. And at that time, I sort of thought, okay, close the office, work from home, love it. This will be good.
Right.
Again, how wrong I was. So it was definitely early in the week before, and I don't recall, I guess New Hampshire had its stay-at-home order like Friday the 13th or something like that. So basically mid-March.
Right.
yeah. I guess it was Friday the 13th. I don't remember, but
It sounds
Could
right.
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it was right about then, although I don't recall exactly. So it just kind of crept in during that week or so after we got home. And then Massachusetts went, okay, stay at home. And then at that point, it's inevitable. Massachusetts does it. And this pattern recurred constantly. Massachusetts did something and then New Hampshire would do it. So
Right.
um, I guess I knew we were going down this path soon after we got back from San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
And it was no longer just a kind of a Pacific Coast phenomenon.
Right. Oh, so I didn't realize that. I mean, since, by the way, like I live out here and you and I saw each other, plus our families saw each other, saw each
Yep.
other's or whatever. We all saw each other and yeah, at that time in late February, early March. But it wasn't, so you thought it was like Pacific Coast at first.
At the time, yeah. So when we were about to fly out the week before we left here, we were reading things about San Francisco possibly doing a state of emergency, or they may have done. I don't recall.
Right,
And we thought maybe we should just not go. And then we thought, well, obviously we went ahead. We thought, we'll just kind of be careful,
right.
basically.
Yeah.
And we went ahead with it. And it was a good week. We obviously didn't run into any trouble or anything. We went to San Jose Sharks game, which would be the last hockey game that we would attend.
Right.
And all went well, and we headed on home, and then it got real.
It got real. Were people on the plane, like, I never asked you this, were people on the plane freaked out, or some, or a few people? No.
Well, not that I noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. Everything on our return trip in both airports seemed pretty normal, I think. Yeah, I would have to say, especially in New England, on that day that we returned, nothing really seemed to be, there were no signs of like impending doom.
Right.
Yeah, people seemed totally normal to the best of my ability to tell. So yeah, we didn't see it. So yeah, then we came home and things developed.
Yeah. What would you say, like, I mean, I know for some people it's different things. What was your like super like nadir? Like, what's the low point of the whole thing for you?
Yeah, I would say, well, the nadir would have to be just kind of terrible mental health.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how it could have gotten worse than that unless I'd gotten, severely physically ill.
Right.
But it was just so, I mean, you know how it is, you having mental health issues, being depressed and whatnot. Right. Gone through that plenty in my life. Right. But this was like, I don't know if I want to live in this world anymore level.
Right.
Just brutal. So that was definitely the worst.
Right.
That was the nadir, and just getting up in the morning and go, I want this day to be over.
Right.
Over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some okay parts here and there, and it's helpful to have some family at home, although that can go both ways, Mm-hmm. so there's that, and there were ways to fill time and all that kind of thing, but just the filling time exercise, it was just like painful sometimes.
Yeah.
And then dinner would come around. Dinner was like it. You make dinner, you sit down and eat.
Right.
And it's kind of the bright spot of the day. I don't know. It's just, again, it's just so surreal. That it was just a struggle mentally.
Yeah.
Like it was real grind, like just, you know, wears you out. And Cliff used the term beaten down. Like at the end of the day, he would just feel beaten down. I totally felt that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I did. Yeah, I did too. I don't know. God, it's hard to fucking think about. It was so awful. How did you make it through? Like, what did you like enduring? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah. I do like to read, so there's that. And yeah, so my whole physical exercise routine was just gone.
right.
And that had been huge for me because it's a major difference um, for me and how I would feel after a good round of physical exercise
Right.
or competing in basketball or whatever. You know, at the end of the workout, you just get that endorphin thing.
Right.
You kind of feel pretty good the rest of the day. So that's just gone
Yeah.
and wiped out. So I don't know. I don't really know how I made it through. I guess just kind of like, well, I'm going to have dinner tonight and that'll be pretty good. And then at the end of every day, I just get to go to sleep and kind of let it all go away.
Right.
And just hopefully it'll end at some point.
Right.
You know? And, you know, and then I also want to say this because I had this one like crystallizing moment, you might say, when I was driving through this lily white New Hampshire town on my way to work. Between here and there's a sign that says "Spread hope, not fear," and I got really, really angry, and I wanted to just get out and kick that sign into pieces. I was just so pissed off at it. I'm like,
right.
We are living right now in a fear-based society, and the messaging is relentlessly pure fear. What the, I can swear, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Cliff has it. I'm like, what the fuck hope? Are you expecting me? Did you try spreading hope? And, you know, did you try it at all? I mean, I didn't really, but you could tell if you tried spreading the wrong kind of hope, it would go over like a lead balloon. Like, you want people, what do you mean? You want people to die? You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So I was like, what? So what do you mean hope? And,
right.
and I had to pull a car over and just take a while and just calm down.
Oh, so you didn't beat the shit out of the sign?
No, because I was pretty sure I would get caught.
Right. There's cameras fucking everywhere now, right?
Yeah. At first, I wanted to just drive into it and knock it over, and then I just wanted to like pound on it, and then I was like, okay, I can't go to work like this. I pulled over and I switched the song to a more my playlist to a more relaxed song that I had on at the time, and I was like, all right, deep breaths, deep breaths. So this was, I'm trying to remember. I guess this must have been because our office shut down. So from the remainder of March through April. Well, actually, no, I used to go in alone in April.
Yeah.
So we set it up at our office because the two lawyers I work for are a husband and wife. Right. So they would stay home, and I would on certain days, and I would go in, and then on other days I would stay home and they would go in. So we were doing like shifts. So this was one of my days in. So it was pretty early on. It was probably April, but I just remember that moment and just completely losing it. And then I was like, wow, did I really just get like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was this bizarre, a lot of, certainly the early part of the last year and a third was just this mixture of like despair and rage.
Right.
So, yeah. And then you look back and I'm just, so how did I get through it? I don't know. I just kept plugging. And again, it helps to have a family to,
right.
You know, stick around for.
Right.
And kind of keep oneself grounded, so forth.
Yeah. for sure. I mean, I think it was much later. There actually, so we had a friggin', we had a sign that was just like the California messaging. It was at the local playground park, the park. It's
Yeah.
like city park. And it said, you know, the whole thing like 6 feet apart, wear your mask and all this. And I had thoughts about like beating that thing up. And one day it was just on one of those like, you know, orange and white, like horses
Yeah. Yeah.
things. And I thought I did actually like, I think only a couple months ago it was still up. I like kicked it over once.
Nice.
Just one day. And then I just put it back up because I was like, this is dumb. But and then I had thoughts of like, you know, they have two people like stay 6 feet apart, like give, and they had two people facing each other, and I wanted to draw like penises on each of the people or whatever. I never did that, like, because that's like I couldn't. I would joke about it though, but I never did it. But
there's that great thing where the mayor of New York set up some like tip line,
yeah,
like rat out your neighbors, and people just sent dick pics.
Right.
It's great. But oddly enough, things like that kept me going.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And of course, I have to mention, of course, our text exchanges also kept me going and helped me get through it.
Yeah, same here for sure.
Yeah. Because, you know, all around everything was madness and
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's mystifying. Just to think, like when I think about like making it through, I don't know. I kind of know what I did, but just I forgot. Like when you told that story, I remembered like the sort of. I kind of went through a cycle. It'd be like a few days, and then one day I'd just be like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the great thing about having outlets like physical exercise and going to events and things like that, because it keeps you on more of an even keel,
right?
Instead of these wild extremes. So yeah, a year of a lot of wild extremes, mood wise.
Yeah, same here. And I didn't, right. And you play basketball, I play hockey, and that was done too. It was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right when I want to beat the shit out of like some little rubber puck, I can't, you know.
Right. And check somebody really hard.
Right. Oh, we don't check. Luckily, I'd be like scared.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, basketball, obviously, we don't either.
Yeah. It's still like you push.
I might have.
Yeah. Right. It might have turned into check basketball. Like last June. Right. Oh my God. But do you, so also like the other thing where you, so I guess that was your outlet. Like, did you have people you could talk to about it? That's one thing. I just say for me, it was hard to talk to people within my immediate vicinity about it, because a lot of them out here were very much like, oh, it's so dangerous. And, you know, when you're outside, you shouldn't have a mask on, and going outside. And we had this county here was like, close the parks and all the parks.
Right.
And so people are like, look at you like, if you walk through the parks. And,
exactly. Yeah.
And I know, like, how'd you deal with that shit? Like, and I remember, and it seemed to be the governors were talking to each other, because like the beaches were closed here, and then they were closed in New Hampshire.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, why?
I know.
Yeah. So, around here, no, I didn't have people to speak candidly.
Yeah.
Or even, you know, bring up things. I just kind of, I don't know, just did everything I was supposed to, kind of thing, you know. So yeah, basically. Oh wait, 1 second. Can I pause or
pause.
step off screen for a moment?
Here we go. Okay. The two of us didn't have that different a viewpoint, but when it came to, in some ways we did. Like I remember taking the kids one time to the park.
Yeah.
We weren't supposed to be in the park, and I was like, this is ridiculous. There's no one in the park. I'm not going to stay out of the freaking local park. Like, I'm sorry. How the fuck am I going to get anyone sick walking through the park? And then we were in the park, and the park's pretty big. And on one parking lot at one end, there was a police car. And I was like, okay. And we started walking, and the police car went by the other end of it. And then one time, I took the two kids, and we were walking through the park in the grass, and my partner, as they would say out here, was like, knew it was against the law at the time, and was like walking in the road and not going with us. And that was frustrating. To me, that was frustrating, because I was like, why? But people had so many, there were so many levels of like, you got to obey the law, right? And then some of us, like, for me, there was like a limit. It was like, I can't obey all these laws. It's too much.
Right.
And I was sneaking into the state park and stuff to go jogging all the time.
And there's demonstrably no danger.
Right, exactly.
But it was sort of like, you know, and they closed the beaches here, which is ridiculous.
Right, that's
especially ones that people seldom use, and they just put sawhorses across so you couldn't park.
Right.
And you know, the whole idea was that, you know, it's necessary to do all this, and it's 100% worth doing, and it's so unquestionably all the right thing to do that we can't discuss it.
Right.
And that drove me absolutely bats.
Yes.
And you know, so I felt like I couldn't ask anyone, you know, what is the logic here? Does this make sense? And stuff like that. Like, even the most mild questions I felt were completely off limits.
Right.
So,
hold on,
you know.
Sure. Ah!
What you want?
Yeah, put it back. It's a brief timeout. Okay.
Homemade popsicle effect.
Homemade water effect.
Anyway. Not even ice, it's just water.
I'll close the door, please.
Oh, right.
Okay. Here we go. So yeah, right.
So at home and work, it was a no-go. Yeah. So I read a lot of stuff online, went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Saw what some other people were saying and that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but you feel like you're swimming against the tide.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much. I mean, it became,
and not just any tide, like a Bay of Fundy tide.
Right, totally, just like, because it was, the words that we used out here in the Sonoma County, they were like, it basically became this thing like, we're doing this because COVID, we're doing that because COVID, and it didn't explain it any further.
Exactly.
It wasn't like because COVID, and you know, like the beaches had no logic behind it, but they just said because COVID, even though anybody with any common sense would know a respiratory virus is just in a split second. You know, it's not gonna, unless you're like making out with, or like talking to them like right here for, you know, it was baffling.
Yeah, you have to be indoors for a long time with people. That's basically the transmission mechanism.
Right.
Yeah, like what curfews? What sense does a curfew make?
Right. I don't.
Like it's not there. There's no time of day component.
Right.
So it just
night.
It's just it goes to bed. It's like,
right.
COVID is strictly diurnal.
Yeah.
And also crepuscular, I guess. Anyway.
Yeah.
It just got to the point, you know, where you just feel like these assholes are just doing this on purpose to micromanage us and, you know, test the limits of our compliance and malleability, and in fact see if there are any limits.
Right.
And it was profoundly disturbing to see how few, you know, to see a lack of resistance to limit setting.
Right.
And just kind of no effort to say, all right, we're going to really, you know, get good hard data so that we can expand to the maximum extent possible your ability to do normal life things.
Right.
And yeah, it's certain. So then there's the dichotomy between yes, we'll do anything you say people, and other people who, you know, just I don't know, they just wanted to get some of their lives back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, or I should say, maybe just people who wanted to get their lives back, and others who felt like it was far too dangerous even to think about doing that.
Right.
And then that there just wasn't any attempt at all to have a dialogue and get the two opposing, factions to reach some sort of sensible agreement.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just yeah.
Do you want your popsicle?
No thanks, Ollie. I'm gonna pause this.
So it's like they're digging their heels in more. Like, okay, well, if you want to be out after dark, then we're going to set a curfew.
Right.
If you want to go,
is it really ready? It's ready.
Hi.
Oh, so that was just Amos faking me out. There actually are good ones.
No.
I don't want to keep you up super late. So the damn thing, yeah, the polarization of the whole friggin' thing.
Right. Nobody wanting to like give an inch. So, and then of course, in fairness, you have to say there were people who would be like, I want to just walk into a nursing home with no mask and smoke cigarettes, and you'd have those people, obviously.
Yeah.
Because some caution is certainly helpful, but there was just no effort afoot to try to find a reasonable middle ground solution. So
no, there's no balance. It was just like,
yeah. And I wonder if we'll ever get that back. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things I truly wonder if we'll get back.
Right.
And I try not to think about that, but that's sort of like really the worst part.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's never good. I don't know. I just think it's never good. It's never good precedent to have to allow a government to say, you can take all my rights away in this situation, but I know you won't do it in another situation.
Right. You'll always use it for our own good, and you'll never abuse it. And yeah, exactly. And it was just so sudden.
Right.
I never thought it would happen.
Right.
And suddenly, boom! It's not freedom if you have to ask permission, and having what is widely considered an excellent reason not to have a free society is not as good as having one.
Right.
I don't know. And it's like people suddenly discovered that sometimes people in nursing homes die.
Right.
Which was also weird. Like in New Hampshire, like practically all of the deaths were nursing home patients. And I think the average age was like 83 or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. I stopped looking at the data after a while.
Right.
And it's only if somebody would actually tell me something that really, because I just didn't want to hear it anymore. I got wicked fatigue early on.
Yeah.
Americans, I think, as a society, just have this uniquely pathological fear of death, greater than any society has or ever has had, I think.
Right.
Like most societies kind of make their peace with it. And, you know that your elders have lived their lives and they're going to die, and you honor them. And it just seems to be a lot healthier. I haven't lived in any other societies, so there's that disclaimer. But it's not like, and then again, if you say things like that, people would say, "Oh, so you just don't care if people die?" Like, no.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you make any sort of statement like that, it's like, "Oh, okay, you want to kill everybody," and it's more like, this phenomenon of people dying has kind of always been there. So, and certain segments of the population are more vulnerable to that. But there are also very large segments of our population that aren't vulnerable to it.
Right.
So I don't know. And could we kind of take that into account maybe a little bit?
Right. At least like, yeah, to have it. I don't know. It was so nutsy. Like on the one hand, like, so, you know, I'm in like liberal California and whatever. Well, especially given where I live. Well, that's more immediate Bay Area, right? Is all.
Yeah.
And the hell was I gonna say? Well, there was people are just like, we got to do everything we can to like save everybody, right?
Yeah.
But there was the thing about that is there, I don't know. I found it so frustrating because people were so extreme about it. Like I remember discussing it on Nextdoor, which is a total waste of fucking time. But like one person,
Nextdoor,
we have to close things down because, you know, you can't have a solo landscaper continuing to garden, like, you know, because he might go to the gas tank and like get COVID off the handle of the gas thing and then like go to his thing and put it like somehow on the doorknob. And then it was like these ridiculous stretches, but people were so adamant, like, you got to shut everything down. It's like, in that case, like a solo landscaper is not going to get anyone sick. And also, where did the assumption come from that it even spread by touch? Because it was like some of the people from the beginning were saying that wasn't really part of it.
And it isn't, and it never has been.
No, it hasn't.
It's not. It doesn't spread on surfaces.
And that was a fun time. Like, didn't you had to endure some washing of groceries, didn't you? Yeah.
I I bit my tongue so hard. It's pretty exasperating. But luckily, that kind of thing can't really last. You know,
no, it's a couple of weeks.
Can't keep that up.
No, it's ridiculous.
You know, it's going to peter out. But then, you know, the kind of the worst thing is people wouldn't explain what the chain of causation is. They just say, like you were saying before, like, well, just because COVID, right? And they'd say things like, well, you know, if you don't wear your mask, you're putting my grandmother at risk. Well, how? I don't have access to your grandmother.
Right.
Where is your grandmother? She lives in her house, right? I'm not going to her house. Okay. And then if I see you, which I'm not going to,
right,
and you go visit your grandmother, it's your fault, not mine.
Yeah.
You know, also I'm healthy. I can't spread a virus that I don't, and that was never, you know, I can't spread a virus that I don't have, but that was never part of the thinking.
Right.
They didn't say, and then, you know, you'd hear these things like, well, you're going out without a mask, but would you go skydiving without a parachute? Like,
yeah, that's not the fucking same.
What's the survival rates? What are the survival rates for those two things?
Right.
Are they different? And if so, why?
Right. So, I mean, yeah, the messaging, plus the messaging was like, you wear a mask for other people, is what they kept saying, right? You don't wear a parachute for other people. Like,
exactly.
None of those things, it was, I mean, I found it really maddening because those kind of arguments just made no sense, but they were just thrown out there all the time and people are like gut behind them and everything.
Oh, absolutely. It's foursquare behind them. But that's a way. And I don't, and you know what? When people say that, I don't believe them. When they say, I'm doing this for you, I don't believe you.
Right.
I don't. I think you're doing it because you're afraid, period.
Right.
And okay, so, you know, I'm not anti-fear. Yeah, and again, I'm just, it's been the year of disclaimers too, right? Just disclaimer after disclaimer. Like, I'm not saying fear is wrong, period. End of story. I'm not saying that. You know, fear is a powerful motivator. Sometimes it's justified, you know, and sometimes it can lead you to make good decisions. Like, you know, I don't drive drunk because I'm afraid I'm going to kill someone or myself or whatever disastrous consequence. So it's not so much that, but to say, you know, like this preening, you know, I'm doing this for other people is, I just thought it was a lie. It never sounded sincere.
Right.
But what it did is it allowed, you know, the enforcement of like, there's no at your own risk thing anymore.
Right.
Like you're not allowed to do things at your own risk. So it allowed the universal enforcement of all these precautions.
Right.
You know, like if you skydive without a parachute, to go back to that, you know,
right.
People can't say, well, you're endangering my life.
Right.
Nope. I'm not.
Right. You might take out one person that way, but not two.
Yeah, true.
Oh God. Yeah.
So it just got and you know, it got really annoying with that sort of, if you'd say, you know, what's the, you're telling me you know, it's not safe to go outside and walk down the sidewalk with my face bare.
Right.
You're like, well, okay, but how's anyone going to catch it? Well, and it wouldn't be satisfactorily answered, obviously, because the answer, if satisfactory, would be, well, there's no danger because, you know, your breath is going to go out in the air,
right?
And no one,
like, so tiny, yeah,
and it's not going to, and then it's going to go to the air and fall to the ground, and it can't live outside the host. So,
right. Yeah, I know, but then, yeah, that was maddening. And out here, there's this whole, like, I think it was Dutch or some shit. There was some study about slipstream. So it was like, you're walking along, you know, and that you're making a slipstream of COVID behind you. And it was like, but that, and for people who are like, you're anti-science or whatever, that was such bullshit science. It's like, yes, theoretically, yes, you make a slipstream with your breath, right? But how does that turn into like infecting other people?
It doesn't. And also it disperses.
Right. So there's all these like tenuous connections people had used to say like, oh, you have to wear a mask outside. I mean, and you have to, you know, stay 6 feet away outside. Like you can't, you know, people would just like, I don't know. I just remember people being like stepping way off like a sidewalk when I walked by, and it's like, we're walking by for a split second. Are you serious?
Yeah. It was just so shaky, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, like in winter, in winter when you can see your breath, it doesn't go in these neat little lines. It goes up like that.
Right back to someone else's mouth. Yeah.
Like a French mustache.
Right. It's just so strange. And especially where you are, where your cases were so low. I mean, and where I am too, really, but statewide, like, you know, LA, of course, because it's a packed-in city, had more cases, and San Francisco, and I think did too. And New York City, of course, and all that. But like, I just didn't get it for New Hampshire and like Maine and, you know, all these places that are rural.
And no one, I'm not aware of any examples, I don't know if you are, of COVID patients who caught it by going outside alone, and someone else who didn't have COVID, but it was in their throat or something, somehow had recently breathed.
Right.
So, in fact, I'm not aware of any cases of outdoor transmission, period.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. That was crazy.
Yeah. So I think.
But why do you think, I've been curious. I mean, some people obviously went the whole route of like Bill Gates is planning some fucking whatever.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of that weird shit too.
Right, and there's this guy from England. I can't remember his name. But he had a movie like out, and he was like really about it too. And you know, people think there's some fucking conspiracy that's all about, which didn't make any sense to me. I was like, you guys are lunatics, but I could see their point. But anyway, my question for you is like, why do you think it was so nutsy in that like over control government, like where they're making people wear masks outside and closing outdoor events and stuff? Like, why do you think it happened?
I don't know. I guess my hypothesis would be, you know, my hypothesis is that when you're invested with power, you like to use it. I don't know. It just seemed like a big power trip to me.
Yeah.
That'd be and then another thing that I've said before, and this was going back to responses to terrorism in the US. Like when something, so I have this kind of hypothesis that when something terrible and cataclysmic happens, like September 11th,
Right.
a society will basically say, we need to do something. And then the response is the more expensive, intrusive, and high effort a thing you do, the more it seems like you're doing something. So like when they say you need to do something, the government will respond with something that is very high visibility, doing of something.
Right.
And it's not really, and it doesn't have to work.
Right.
And I'll backtrack again to the TSA, the whole genesis of the TSA. We were doing something. We were spending a lot of money and effort on the TSA, delving into people's suitcases,
Right.
taking people aside and interrogating them, making the security lines a whole lot longer. It was obvious that we were really doing something.
Right.
And no one really, and people are like, and it satisfies a certain segment of people like, yeah, they really feel, all right, we're doing something.
Yeah.
I go to the airport, I can see the something that we're doing.
Right.
It's very clear that we're not doing something.
Right.
And so I feel like this was a lot more of the same. People they heard the numbers and what was going on in Italy, and then it came here and they heard what was going on here. We had to do something.
Right.
And we did the most intrusive, most expensive, most arguably harmful and most far-reaching something that we've ever done in non-wartime.
Right.
So that's, I guess I would have to say that's what I think it was.
Yeah.
It's like, let's get down to the business of doing something.
Right. Let's do something.
and people would look around, they're like, something is being done. And then people would say, well, I don't want to do all of that something. And they'd lose their minds. Like, but we have to. We can't not be doing something.
Right.
This is a terrible thing. We have to do something. Don't resist. So yeah, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And also, well, I think too about, this whole, especially in the US, there's this real attitude about war on drugs, war on terrorism, war on COVID, right? And it's like,
yeah.
So the appearance of like going, we got to fight this thing. We can't give it all we got and all that whole shit. It's I think there's a lot to that, I think there's a lot to that, what you're saying, the mentality behind all these over restrictions.
Yeah. We're a big war on X society.
Yeah. Without any and there's no moderation in having a war on something, right? It's like, yeah, it's insane.
Exactly. It's like all out. It's an emergency. War is a state of emergency.
Right.
And it just fits. It's the situation, I think.
Yeah. I think so. In the same time, like, I just wonder, like, I look back at it and it's like, what would given there were and there weren't a lot of unknowns, right? I think there were deliberately a lot of unknowns about things we actually knew.
Yep.
But I just look back, it's like, for me personally, my biggest hope would be like the nation as a whole learned something. I'm not sure it did though. But so like, how would we do it differently in the future,
I'm kind of a pessimist and a cynic, and I feel like we didn't really learn anything useful.
Right.
We learned, and I think of it as like, we've kind of, what's been developed is seen as sort of a blueprint. And you'll probably recall, people were saying, well, we'll be a lot stronger after this is over,
right? Which
is another lie.
Right.
Like, developing a surrender reflex is stronger. Like, we're going to come out of this and we're going to be like, and there's a lot of self-congratulation, it seems to me, like, look at what we just got through. It was awesome. Aren't we amazing? And
right.
And so it feels like a blueprint. It feels like if this happens again, because obviously at the source, right, we'll just say, you know, it all began in China, right? That's a fact.
Right.
You can debate whether it was in one of their wet markets or the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's a debate to be had there, I suppose, and I'm not going to delve into it.
Yeah.
But having said that, we know that it began in China, and I feel like with this kind of self-congratulatory feeling we're giving ourselves, like, oh, we went through all this, so now we know that we can do it again if we have to.
Oh, Lord, yeah.
It's like a skill we've developed. So when it happens again in China, or it could be somewhere else, doesn't have to be China, but when it happens again, we've got the blueprint. We will not take any front-end preventative action.
Right.
We'll do all the same things. We're like, oh, okay, well, you know, let people come in, let the virus get established in our country, and then back to the playbook.
Yeah. Oh.
Shutdowns, imprison everyone, do all that. We've done it before. We can do it again. We're stronger now, see?
Oh.
And that's so discouraging if I'm right, you know? But I'm just getting that feeling. Like, in other words, I'm not hearing any sense of mistakes were made. Basically, the messaging that I'm hearing is all, nope, no mistakes were made. We really performed brilliantly at everything we had to do. Yeah, that's
disturbing.
Yeah, you know, right? It's like, I've run one marathon, I can run another.
Right. But the thing about that is, it's, to me, it's demonstrably not true. You're not
absolutely not.
Like,
right.
I personally have PTSD from this thing. Like,
yep,
unquestionably. My kids do.
Yep.
I know it does. And that's not strength. That's like that's PTSD.
Psychological damage. Absolutely.
Yeah. And who knows what kids are going to be, you know, long-term stuff. It's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
That really bugs me. And so.
Right. So I think a good, you know, here are the mistakes that were made, kind of introspection nationally would really be helpful.
Right.
And just say, okay, well, you know, let's just look at it all rationally. And there's a word, rationally.
Right.
You know, let's just take a good rational look at all of this and think about how it all played out and try to avoid this misery again.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
Just do everything we can. And, you know, if something like this crops up somewhere else, you just you close their borders. Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
You close their borders. You have to.
Right.
You know, just go, well, it's a free for all. Everybody in, you know, like, okay, well, there's a deadly virus in China. Everybody come into the United States. You know, we don't want to do anything to make people stay in China or anything. They're all free to go.
Yeah.
Everybody in. Okay, the virus is here. Nobody breathe.
Right.
So, you know, I hate having that feeling that it's the blueprint or the playbook, but
right.
I don't know.
It's disturbing. I mean, yeah, I hope we'll learn something from it. I'm not convinced we will.
Yeah.
I do still have that, which is, I mean, that's the thing about hope. It's just, hope is just like, just hope, you know, it's,
yeah. Yeah. Just the feeling that, you know, someday it's going to get better somehow.
Right. And there's I do think like, there are people out there, and what's disturbing to me is like mainstream media, like, you know, the virologist, I mean, to get into this issue a teeny bit, the virologist said like, there's no way it's from the lab. It's not from the lab. It's not from the lab. And all the news agencies just went, yes, you're right.
Yeah.
We'll publish a PR piece as if it's the truth. And that's disturbing to me. Because
right. And just to throw in too, like, you know, there was a real sense that, I've heard various people saying, you know, not only isn't it from the lab, there's no reason even to consider the possibility that it's from the lab.
Which is,
and that's obvious bullshit.
No, well, and those are the sometimes probably a huge overlap of the people saying like trust the science, right? And that's extremely unscientific thinking to like completely toss a hypothesis away just because you want to.
Right.
A viable hypothesis, an extremely viable hypothesis given like their safety level in the lab was lower than it should be, and they were deliberately like breeding these fucking things.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
whatever.
It's highly plausible.
It's super probable.
I'm not saying it's fact, but it's highly plausible.
Highly plausible. Most.
And since when does science say, don't test that hypothesis?
Right.
Since when does science make pronouncements? Like, okay, we've reached a conclusion. Science can no longer be done on this topic. That's not how it works. You know, no scientist is going to say, you mustn't test gravity.
Right.
They're like, all right, test gravity, you fucking lunatic. You're going to find out there's gravity. Jesus, go ahead. Yeah. Like the way they treat these flat earth people justifiably.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, do some experiments, have fun.
Yeah. See how that, yeah, totally.
It doesn't say, oh, you can't test that.
Right. So yeah, there's a prohibitive thing going on that's not about science. To me, it's a real shame. Anyway, that whole thing is a real shame because like a lot follows from that.
Yeah.
If that had been like taken as a viable hypothesis, then we could have found out that it was probably like it's like likely true, and then you know whatever follows from that, and we know more about the virus itself because
if
we found out it was a gain of function virus, then we would have known it behaves in this way, and we could have like thrown away all the shit immediately about the touching surfaces and the outside worries. All that bullshit could have been thrown out the window, and oh man, it
would have been useful.
Yeah.
But instead it was, you know, circle the wagons, hands off, no, you know, no looking at that, nothing to see here, that type of thing.
Right. And that's not
I felt
country. That's
I just felt so manipulated.
Right. It's like, to me, I will say there's an intuitive, like without even looking at it, there was an intuitive thing, like for me, there was like a real intuitive sense, like this is propaganda and I know it from the day one.
Exactly.
You know, and it turned out like, you know, it's a dangerous virus. I know, and I heard of anecdotally people who have like long-term effects and like headaches and shit like this. Yeah. That's disturbing. And, but also just day one is like propaganda about.
Yeah, and then like they're tossing out numbers, but they're just, you know, they're just numbers. If you say 28 people died of COVID in New Hampshire today,
right?
Well, who were they? And you never got that.
No,
it was just numbers. And, you know, again, with the resistance to questioning, like, okay, who, how old were they? Where were they? You know, and it would, if you could get the data, it would probably have been something like 26 people in nursing homes over the age of 80 and 2 other people with terrible chronic diseases.
Right.
So like, I don't know. I don't know of around here, I don't know of any examples of healthy people under 60 even, or under 70 even, who died from this. I just don't know of any, but
right.
I don't know. It's not like I know everybody.
No, true. I don't think I know. I know a couple of people who had it.
Yeah, I do know a few. One
more seriously than, and then, yeah, and some not that seriously at all. And
right.
And it was a dangerous, I mean, the thing that changed for me, I don't know if it changed for you, like in the beginning, I was like, it's not that dangerous. And then over time, I was like, actually, it could be dangerous. And I do think there's long-term effects in some people. And I heard that anecdotally, but I don't know. But it didn't justify someone. To me, I mean, that was part of the discussion for me. It was so polarized. It was either like, you're a Trumper and you have a gun and you're like standing outside the Minnesota Capitol, right? Being like, my freedom, or else you're liberal and you're like, we got to protect everybody, man. It's my job. And there's no, just like you alluded to before. I mean, there was no, like, I don't know where the people who were reasonable went.
There was no dialogue.
No. So I don't know about that. Friggin', yeah.
Yeah, and you just have to, how will we get back to pre-COVID world? And if so, how? I don't know. I'm not sure about the answer to the first question, and I haven't a clue as to the second question. So.
Right.
But I feel like, I think that I would have to predict if this happens again on this scale. I think there will be a lot more violent unrest the second time round.
I would imagine exactly just like that.
That kind of unrest.
Yeah.
Like waving popsicle sticks about.
Yeah.
In a menacing fashion. Belligerently.
Sticky hand.
Oh, don't do that. Sticky hands.
Do you like these?
Oh yeah, those are awesome.
I watched it a lot of times. But it still sticks well if you fling it on something.
I'm a big fan of sticky hands.
Cool. Whoa.
Yeah, they're
I'm
cool.
gonna pause this. And we're back. So yeah, so that was a whole shit show. Like what were there any, I mean, for you, were there any like positives from this whole dastardly
I was actually going to try to think about some positives before we did this, but I don't know what I came up with, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure there were any that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah.
Certainly, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I could always go with the thing. I value more things that I lost for over a year.
Right.
But then I was like, but it wasn't worth it.
Right.
That's a fucking shit way to learn to value things. Right. So there were too many offsets, but yeah, I guess, I appreciate things more.
Right.
Friends, family, doing things. We haven't fully resumed doing things. Haven't been to a hockey game yet.
Yeah.
But I guess that's coming eventually.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like my basic character improved or anything like that. I don't feel like my character was built.
Right. Well, yeah, it's hard to say it's character building when it's like a pointless exercise, right?
Yeah, I don't feel like I changed for the better, and I just can't say that I've improved in any way.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, anytime I try to think about a positive, I just immediately think, well, it wasn't worth it. So I guess the big positive is that it's kind of sort of ended.
Right.
At this point.
Yeah.
Not sure how final this ending is, but it's something.
Yeah. It is something. I mean, there are discussions about variants and vaccination rates and shit.
Yeah.
I don't follow that. I just see this stuff on YouTube because it's like they force it to the top of the thing. And I see that and I just don't watch it. But
right.
There's still an attempt on some people, I don't know who it is, but someone's part to like keep it going, it feels like. Oh
yeah, no, there's a real camp of people out there who want it to go on.
Right.
Like it's like the whole Donald Trump thing, like one of those Ryan Long videos. It's like, I didn't have a personality until Donald Trump became president.
Exactly.
And then there's a person who's like, oh, I am a Trump supporter. And then there's another person who's like, Trump is everything bad.
Right.
Like their whole personality is based on Trump. And I feel like there's people out there whose whole personality and reason for living is now COVID based.
Yeah.
So those people aren't going to want it to end.
Right.
But hopefully they get driven off onto the fringe among the lunatics. I don't know.
Yeah. Although, I mean, the media itself, like it was a huge boon for them, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
As far as people tuning in and like getting all these, all these views and all these people suddenly paying attention to New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, whatever you have that they probably weren't paying attention before.
Fox News, all of them.
Yeah.
They leveraged it big time. It was a huge moneymaker for them because it's been like this for my entire lifetime. I don't know if the American press has ever been different, but keeping people afraid is a big moneymaker. It really drives ratings.
Right.
And ratings are what they're all about. They're ratings whores.
Yeah.
Like they ask, there's a two-step.
Yeah. There's a two-step what?
Two-step decision tree when running a story. One, will it get us ratings? Two, I formulated this once before. I forgot what the second thing was. But anyway, it's like, will it get us ratings? A, yes. B, A, yes, run the story. That's the flow chart.
Right.
B, no, don't run it.
Yeah.
And then all the other questions, is it ethical or down below, whether they ran the story.
Right.
I formulated that once before, but basically it's the top five things, top five criteria for whether to run a story or not are all, will it get us ratings? And
right.
Other things don't enter into it until number 6 or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But this has to have been, I don't know, that this has to have been a complete bonanza for them.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just the thought that, because they've had to move previously, they've had to move from scary thing to scary thing and find a new scary thing to make people afraid of. They got to lean on this thing reliably every day, just without end. It must have been, I could, if I watched, I probably could have seen their little boners under the news desks. This has to have been, this is salad days for them.
Yeah.
It really was. And I once, from time to time, I would accidentally see some part of a news program, like in a store or something, or in a waiting room or what have you, or accidentally on my own TV.
Right.
You just see them going, COVID, woo. Just so excited to tell you the latest. 6 deaths today.
Yeah.
That was, I would have shot my TV, truly, if I had watched any news.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Like John did, yeah.
Yeah, just like John did, shoot my TV.
Yeah, I can understand it though, damn. And that was before COVID.
Yeah.
Look at the finger.
So, and then the other thing is, like, I think a lot of people, and media included, and also like private citizens, I think a lot of people behaved frankly shamefully and embarrassingly, and they are neither ashamed nor embarrassed.
Like who for instance? Let me close the door. Hold on. Like who?
I would just say generally media-wise, the fear-mongering was just pretty shameful.
Yeah.
Because it's all like ratings and money driven.
Right.
And just stoking the panic like that is just irresponsible.
Hmm.
And I don't think we're even looking at suicide rates. during this past year plus.
Right.
They've got to be, record levels.
I would assume. Yeah, no one's, that's the thing. That's not, I think I saw a story about that once maybe, but that's not in the mainstream media. Like,
no.
And I know, Liz Duff, for instance, and then
yep.
a couple of people, like not anyone I knew, but people I knew people that like overdosed and shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're like, fuck it, I'll just take drugs. I can't do anything else with my life. I'll just.
Oh, I had a couple of days like that. I was like, if I had a good bunch of heroin right now, I would do it. And I was like,
yeah.
God, I don't have it. And I don't have that history at all. But
I know, right?
Yeah.
I totally felt the same.
Right.
I just, let's spend today completely strung out and see how that goes.
Yeah. I know.
Good thing there wasn't any handy, eh?
Yeah. No, good thing.
But it was sort of like, well, we'll just brush that off, and it's a tolerable consequence. It's like, yeah, there are going to be a whole lot of suicides, but that's okay because we're saving lives.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and kids can't go to school and have social. Kids are losing all their social. Social skills, but they're losing their society basically, and that's okay too.
I have to put this into Tom.
Somehow.
You can show this to Tom.
Okay. Show me sticky. Oh, it's getting all dirty.
You guys aren't done yet?
Yeah, we're gonna finish it.
Wait, it's still recording.
Oh yeah.
Can you just cut it out or
I probably have
For this, or
I'm gonna record.
Did you have any positives out of this? Because I couldn't really think of any.
I did. I mean, there was a time I broke my ankle a year ago on June 18th. Not that I'm keeping track, but I broke it on June 18th, and it was fucking horrible, like COVID, and then I couldn't walk.
Oh yeah. I remember that now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was hard. And then, but on the day I broke it, I was aware of I just started to frame it differently. I was like, this is horrible. And and I was in a state park the day I broke it that was probably still shut. I'm sure it was still shut. So, I don't know, maybe that actually might have been open again, whatever. But and I started to frame it differently. I started to see it like humanity's going through a crisis because we need to, because we're shitting all over the world and killing species left and right, and corporations have taken over the government, et cetera, et cetera. My viewpoint or whatever. And I was just I started to think of it differently, in the best possible light, this needs to happen so that humanity as a whole notices that we can't keep living in this way, that we're the center of the world, and
yeah, and no limits
right
to what we want to do.
Yeah, so that helped.
Extremely dangerous.
It is. It's very dangerous, and it's and it's not about conservative or or Republican or Democrat. It's just the reality is, disappearing.
It's just resources.
Resources, and then disappearing disappearing of songbirds because there's too many deer in the East Coast. All this shit is so out of balance, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's because humans are just we're spreading over we're just doing whatever we feel like and trashing the planet. And I started framing it that way, this needs to happen, and that helped me see it for me more positively. It's everyone's going through a really hard time right now, and we'll come out of this realizing what's important to them. And so in a way that was positive, just reframing it, and at times, not always, but at times I wasn't so annoyed with COVID. I was well, COVID is just a thing we're doing, because the real issue is we're going to kill ourselves within a century.
Yeah.
If we keep doing this shit, right? So
yeah.
With that helped me. And then also it was Amos's school was going back and forth, and I was fuck this. And Naomi and I talked, and I homeschooled him the whole year. And that was a positive too, although it was really hard sometimes because he didn't want me doing it, or I didn't want to do it at times. But in a way, that was positive because like he had a good school year where I feel like, and he learned things academically.
Yeah.
It was a mess, but he learned stuff academically that I'm sure most kids did not in distance learning. And so that, and just like, I think what you said too, like about the values, I realized more stuff that was important to me. And, you know, I don't know, and it felt positive to like, I wrote something to our county health person because she kept saying, because COVID, and I wrote this, and I had a sense that she might have actually read that. And that was cool to be like doing this writing that was, I don't know, yeah, and those things.
Yep.
There are a number of them. And then, yeah, I started paying more attention to my mental health and those,
yeah, that certainly. Yeah.
Yeah. And like finding more community online through Zoom or whatever, and which sucked because I hate having to interact with people this way.
Yeah.
But it was also positive. It's like I met a bunch of people, whereas I actually before living up here felt kind of isolated. We didn't know a lot of people in Santa Rosa because it takes a long time to move into a new place. And so all those things, I felt like the horribleness of it pushed me in a positive direction.
Yeah.
You know, and paying attention to some stuff I had blown off for a while or whatever. Because
yeah, and that might be a better outlook that you're mentioning, that maybe humanity living on the planet maybe will be more careful, and careful could translate into doing less damage. So that could be a potential upside if we follow through on it.
Right. Which is a big.
I didn't think of that, but yeah, that would be a good one, because certainly people have done a lot less resource using in the past year plus.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was all those like, traffic, for instance, out here, traffic from here to like San Francisco, died way down because people were working at home, which that's a real positive.
Yeah, I think we should keep some of that going, honestly, come to think of it. So
yeah, some of those things, it's like, oh, those would be good. And I think, as hard as it was, I think it got some people to really think about the role of the government and pay attention to like the role of propaganda in our lives.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, this is all bullshit all the time. So I think that can, like, I'm just hopeful, like, I hold on to that because I'm like, maybe in a decade, they'll bring more fruition. And I do know, some people realized they hated some career they were doing. Or like, I have a friend who was driving for him, it was great because he was driving to San Francisco every day. It was great. He started working here and then he was like biking around doing this great, like being here and not being on the road 3 hours a day.
Nice.
So there were some positives, but it feels like the best way for me to frame it is just that. It's like we're went through and are going through a shitty hard time, and it's possible that it could turn into a positive awareness of like what we actually want as a species. And maybe
I mean, I see that. I reserve the right to change my mind about how I feel all this gradually over the years, as long as we don't slip back into it again.
Right. Because there is that, because that's the other side of it. Like you said, there's a precedent there's a blueprint, like you said, of just like, if this happens again, we fall into the same rut. We do the same shit.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And I don't know. It's hard to predict whether if one of these comes up in another country again, we'll do anything differently.
Right, I know.
I sure hope so, but like, I guess my takeaway is I sure hope so, but I'm not going to count on it.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, and then the other part is, I guess, I feel like definitely I've been tested, no question about that.
Yeah.
And maybe, gradually I'll feel a little better about that. But now there's a lot of resentment still. So,
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be a process.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, I had, that, for instance, walking through San Francisco and some lady being like, put on your mask, honey. And that whole thing I went through.
Yeah.
I still, I guess I came to understand those people. It's like, they're just terrified. They're terrified and they're terrified. And like, that's okay with me. The fact that they're terrified and really running the show, that's not okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
So, maybe there are some takeaways that we can, I guess I'm going to just do the wait and see thing.
Right.
See how it goes.
Yeah.
But I am happy to report that we're starting to resume doing a few more normal things. Oh, I don't know. Just a quick digression. This whole new normal thing.
Right.
I was saying like, I could just borrow that. So if you just completely wipe something out and replace it with something entirely different and call the different thing like the new old thing.
Right.
So now you just be a complete asshole and just say, oh, this is the new kindness.
Right.
Yeah. So this new normal things. Yeah, it's great. Just just call things the new what you're replacing it. What you're replacing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any we should wrap up. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. Final thoughts. I think I got to everything. I don't know. I'm cautiously pessimistic. Right. I don't know. I still have the whole surreal feeling. And I just want it to go away.
Yeah.
This never happened.
Like I just yearn for normalcy.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's where I am. But I don't know. I guess I'm hopeful that maybe I'll do better at, keeping in touch with people and socializing more and that kind of thing. So maybe I've been provided with some motivation to be a little less antisocial,
right?
Type of thing. Because I don't know. I always I kind of feel like, oh, I'll get in touch with these friends later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow.
Right.
On and on. And you're like, it's a couple of years since I called people and whatever.
Right. Oh yeah.
Or there will just be a few people that, I don't know, just kind of try to work on relationships, I guess.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because and then the kind of the sad part is just for fear that they'll be taken away again. I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just a confusing model.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like, I guess basically I'm kind of still processing.
Right, of course. I think most people are.
Yeah, I would have to say. So I don't really, I don't know how I'll feel about it in 6 months, year, whatever.
Right.
And so I don't know, it's just hard to articulate exactly the outcome at this
Right.
point.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's not time to put a bow on it or whatever because it's not over.
Oh, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of, and it's hard to process it, frankly, when there's still all this like acrimony and misunderstanding, which there still is a lot of right now.
Oh God, yeah.
So.
Or there's just like quiet, unspoken resentment and so forth, blame, etc.
Yeah.
Because I know there's between these two warring factions, there's a lot of mutual blame.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get past that. I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think you will. I don't know if everybody will.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Which is why I say that, if this sort of thing recurs, there's going to be more violent unrest.
Right. Oh, totally.
I would definitely predict that.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording now.
Excellent.
Anyway, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was looking forward to doing this.